Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Philippians. We just began this study yesterday, and we saw the greeting to the Philippians yesterday. The letters from Paul and Timothy to the Christians in Philippi, a church that Paul had founded on his second missionary journey. Now, before we get into the meat of the letter, let's turn back to the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 16, which tells us how Philippi was founded, the church there, by the Apostle Paul. It's a very interesting story. Now, in chapter 16, Paul has just begun, this is Acts chapter 16, Paul has just begun the second missionary journey. He is in the city of Troas, and it says he's uncertain of where to go next, where the next stop on the journey should be. And one night he has a vision in a dream about going to Macedonia. So in chapter 16, verse 9, it says this: During the night, Paul had a vision of a man of Macedonia. Now, Macedonia is the Roman province in the north of Greece. And this Macedonian man stands and begs Paul, "Come over to Macedonia, help us." So after Paul had seen the vision, we got ready at once to leave for Macedonia, concluding that God had called us to preach the gospel there. So Paul first goes to Macedonia because of this vision he received from the Lord, clear direction that he is to plant the Christian gospel in the province of Macedonia. Now, once they arrive in Macedonia, it says they go to the city of Philippi. From there, we travel to Philippi, which was a Roman colony. It was the leading city of Macedonia, and we stayed there for a number of days. It was always Paul's pattern that when he goes to a new place, a new area, he goes to the leading city of the district, plants the church there, and then that church will spread the gospel over the entire province. So naturally he goes to the leading city of Macedonia first, that is Philippi. And in the city of Philippi, we're going to notice that Paul makes three very notable converts, of whom we are told. The first is a woman named Lydia. It says, on the Sabbath day we went outside of the city to the river, where we expected to find a place of prayer. Now, why would Paul go down to the river looking for a place of prayer? You remember that whenever Paul would go to a new city, he would generally start at the Jewish synagogue and begin to preach the gospel. That's always where he started. Philippi did not have a Jewish synagogue. There were Jewish residents in the city, but not enough to form a synagogue. Now, Paul knew that the few Jews that were in the city, they would have a place of prayer. Even if they did not have a synagogue, they would have a place of prayer, and it would normally be by the river. So Paul looks for it, he finds it, and he begins to speak to the people who have gathered at the place of prayer. One of them, it says, is a woman from the city of Thyatira named Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth. She was a worshiper of God. The Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message. So he meets this woman, Lydia, and she immediately responds to the gospel, becomes a believer. Perhaps she is the first believer in Philippi. And she invites Paul to stay in her home. She offers him a place of hospitality. And so Paul and his missionary companions live in the home of Lydia, who seems to be a rather wealthy woman. The fact that she's a dealer in purple cloth indicates a certain amount of wealth, so she probably had a larger kind of home, plenty of room for them. And they begin to evangelize the city of Philippi. It seems they stay there for a while, going to the place of prayer every Sabbath day, making converts there among the Jewish believers, but also among Gentiles who have attached themselves to the place of prayer. Then there's another notable conversion that's going to occur in Philippi, and that has to do with a girl who is a slave. We're told in verse 16, we were going to the place of prayer, and there we were met by a female slave who had a spirit by which she predicted the future. She earned a great deal of money for her owners by telling fortunes. Now, this is a slave girl who is demon-possessed. And this demon in her allows her to make some predictions about the future. And her owners use her to make money. They charge people to listen to what she has to say and make predictions for them. She's a fortune teller. Whenever Paul goes by, she shouts out, "These are servants of the Most High God." And finally, one day, Paul turns around and speaks in the name of Jesus. He says, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to come out of her." And at that moment, the spirit leaves her. So Paul, speaking in the name of Jesus, sets this slave girl free from the demonic spirit that possesses her and restores her to wholeness, we can be pretty confident she becomes a believer. This is the second notable conversion we're told about. Lydia is the first, and now this slave girl set free from a demon by the power of Jesus Christ, and she becomes a believer. However, her owners, the ones who own the girl, are not at all happy with what Paul has done, because though he freed this girl from demonic possession, they can no longer make money off her by her fortune telling. And so they have Paul thrown into prison. So Paul finds himself in the Philippian jail. And that's going to lead to the third notable conversion in Philippi we're told about. But we'll look at that tomorrow. That's going to be the conversion of the Philippian jailer. So join us for our next Bible study as we see how the Philippian jailer became a Christian. Hope you join us for our next 5-minute Bible study in the book of Philippians.